not at all. There's always a lot of new stuff, hundreds of pages of new things, but when it comes to the basic lines of where the government has been, where it's going, where it wants to go, it's exactly where along the same lines. We see that the strategy of holding transfers to persons, things like elderly benefits, child benefits, transfers to provinces, those are going exactly as they had been forecast in the previous two budgets. They wanted to track GDP growth. That's still the same. They want direct program spending to be held constant dollar terms. That's going to be the same. They still expect the budget to balance in 2015-16. That's still the same. Whether that's actually going to work is another question. But this is the basic strategy they've been adopting since the recession was over, and they haven't budged from it at all. And 3 consecutive budgets, and doesn't look like they're going to change.
Conservatives were really excited yesterday to recommit or re-announce their commitment to balance the budget by 2015. According to Mr. Flaherty, they're not going to do it in various ways by placing the burden on families or other governments. So when it came to the part in his speech when he was going to explain how to cut the deficit, he mentioned 2 things: reducing travel and eliminating duplication in government services. Now, if you believe that's how the deficit's going to be eliminated, I have some real estate in Florida to sell you. But this goes again to this idea that the government has been putting along that the budget can be balanced fairly painlessly. During the last election, when Harper was asked how the budget was going to be balanced, he talked about things like consolidating the government's computer systems. Again, that's not going to save billions of dollars, and so cuts are going to have to be made. But this comes back to the point that I've been trying to make and have made various times, that we really don't know what's going on in the budget. The system of estimates, the system of scrutinizing government spending is horribly broken. We don't have a parliamentary budget officer as of next week, and there are all these questions hanging over exactly how the money gets spent. And so going forward over the next year, this should be the question that sort of is in everyone's mind. Yes, we have a budget. Yes, there will be budget bills, but what do we know exactly about what's going on? And how much don't we know? These are the questions that Parliament really has to deal with.
A little footnote in the budget. They took the Candidates Day celebrations on Parliament Hill away from the National Capital Commission, which is the sort of agency that runs things around the National Capital, took it away from the NCC and put it in the hands of the Heritage Department, which means the party will now be directly answerable to a cabinet minister. Right now it's James Moore. But it's bigger than that. The NCC also loses all responsibility for promotions and festivities around the capital, which includes, for example, the popular Winterlude Winter Festival. This is in keeping with a pattern this government has shown of trying to attach a sort of a political agenda to things that we don't really think of as that political. There was a sort of politicization of the anniversary of 1812. There was a political cast to the decision to take the old Museum of Civilization and turn it into the Canadian Museum of History. These are sort of quite subtle but pronounced moves by a very sly government when it comes to political marketing to take control of things that are associated with Canadian patriotism and people feeling good about the country. And I think it's not the kind of thing that is necessarily horrible and bad, but it does raise questions about whether or not there should be some kind of distance between the things that we think of as sort of our shared heritage and the partisan sort of life of our political cut and thrust. But anyway, Canada Day now is no longer a matter that we just think of as, hey, Canada Day. It's Canada Day brought to you by the government of the day.
In 20 or 30 or 50 years, if there's anything that people remember about what happened this week in Canada, it might not be the $250 billion that the federal government spent in its budget. It might be the $100 million that BlackBerry founder Mike Lazaridis put down on a new venture capital operation operating out of Waterloo with a very peculiar focus. It will fund only so-called quantum technology. So technology that's built on the latest research into the very nature of the atom. Potentially incredibly powerful scanners, code machines, computers that would be able to easily solve problems that are far beyond the grasp of today's computers. This builds on the $200 million worth of money that Lazaridis has put of his own money into the Perimeter Institute and the Institute for Quantum Computing in Waterloo. But while those are designed to do pure research, this new quantum technology fund is designed to produce products that are marketable and that he can make money off of, and that his investors can make money off of. And as always with Lazaridis, the scale of his involvement is breathtaking. This $100 million quantum technology fund is triple the size of the previous world's largest quantum technology venture capital fund, which was launched only 3 months ago in California. And I suspect it's going to grow, and he's going to scale it up over time. He's got the former head, Steve Maclean, the former head of the Canadian Space Agency, is one of the people working on this thing. Neil Turok, the great astrophysicist who is the director of Perimeter Institute. And some really heavy legal and accounting muscle is in this to make sure that it actually works as a commercial operation. The government wants to encourage a more entrepreneurial Canada, and they're doing it with all the silly mechanisms that governments usually do. They're going to have an entrepreneurship prize. They're going to have subsidies for venture capital, which robs the term of its very meaning. Mike Lazaridis, as always, is not waiting around for government to create a more entrepreneurial Canada. He's putting his own money where his mouth is. And he's not at all fazed by the lousy year he had getting kicked off as the head of Research in Motion. He's got a plan, and he's going to continue to implement the plan. He's one of the most interesting men in Canada right now.
When Jim Flaherty wakes up this morning, he's probably going to be pretty happy. The 4 big papers that I kind of read every morning to take the temperature of what people are saying, Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, the National Post, the Ottawa Citizen, they're all saying good things. First of all, their news coverage covers everything that Flaherty probably wanted them to in a fairly positive light, critical as they would be and talking to critics, but all the big headlines are happy headlines. As far as the editorials are concerned, there's a lot of cautious optimism. I think that's probably the best way to put it, which isn't exactly exciting, but it's probably something that the finance minister's happy to see, probably expected given the budget he released. And if you can wake up one day and have the National Post saying pretty good things and the Toronto Star saying pretty good things, as cautious or as optimistic as they might be on either end of that scale, again, it's probably a pretty good morning. And all the readers that see those stories obviously will be influenced by those, and they'll be influenced by fairly, if middling, kind of cautiously, optimistically happy editorialists. So the Toronto Star says that the government's really betting on a lot of things happening, the economy continuing to, or at least starting to grow a little more robustly than it has been. And if that doesn't work, then they're pretty concerned, which is fair. The National Post says this isn't exactly a budget that a fiscal hawk would which would play pretty prominently among their readership would love, but there's still some move to restrict spending and move back to a balanced budget. So again, those 2 competing newspapers are saying pretty good things. So when Jim Flaherty wakes up, he'll be happy. When he goes to sleep, probably still be pretty happy.